Have you ever seen a human being who looks like he was created in a secret lab just to be the ultimate goal-scoring machine? Well, meet Erling Haaland, the 6'5" Norwegian footballer who has been banging in goals for fun ever since he arrived in Europe's biggest leagues a few years ago. Haaland is an absolute phenomenon. Let's take a look at just how insane Haaland's scoring numbers really are to get an idea of the level we're dealing with here. Since joining Manchester City in the summer of 2022 after a prolific spell in Germany, Haaland has scored a mind-boggling 50 goals in just 50 games in the Premier League alone. Let that sink in. He's averaging precisely 1 goal per game at the highest level of club football on the planet. For a bit more context, if we look across all of Europe's major leagues, the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, and Liga 1, over the last few seasons, only one man has scored more goals than Haaland's outrageous haul of 112 in 117 appearances. And that's Robert Lewandowski, who is already 35 years old. The young Viking is making elite veterans look like Sunday League players. Just look at the 2022-23 Premier League campaign. Haaland was so far ahead of the chasing pack, it's laughable. He scored 36 goals, which was not only a new Premier League record for a 38-game season, but a whopping 17 more than his nearest challenger, Mohamed Salah, despite Salah playing more games. And it's not just the Premier League feeling the full force of Hurricane Haaland. In the 2023 calendar year alone, across all competitions, his 44 goals put him top of the pile in Europe's top 5 leagues, leaving megastars like Harry Kane and Kylian Mbappe to eat his bubonic dust. The greatness doesn't stop there either. In the Premier League this season, he's bagged 5 separate hat-tricks, which incredibly is as many match balls as every other player in the entire league combined. Haaland reached the milestone of 50 Premier League goals in just 48 games too, which is quicker than 14 of the 20 Premier League teams that have managed that feat in their entire history. We're watching something special, folks. Something that may never be replicated again in our lifetimes. Erling Haaland is stripping this game down to its core essence. He is born a scorer, an apex predator in the box, converting chances into goals at a rate that seems virtually impossible. It makes you wonder if he actually has a nanochip computing unit installed in that gigantic Norse head to calculate precisely where the ball needs to go every time. But how does this blonde-haired man-child from the frozen tundras of Norway keep scoring so prolifically? What kind of futuristic training, cutting-edge sports science, or shady performance-enhancing regimes is he utilizing? Well, buckle up, because Haaland's diet and daily lifestyle habits would likely have most professional sports scientists scratching their heads in utter confusion. This guy's pre-match meals and daily food intake look like they were drawn up by a Viking warlord from the 9th century. You see, Erling is a firm believer in going back to the old-school ways of consuming only the most primal, nutrient-dense foods available in their purest state. So while most pro athletes are chowing down on lean proteins like chicken and fish, plus mountains of greens and good carbs, our boy Haaland is over here munching on cows' hearts, livers, and other types of offal on the regular. It's an interesting point. By consuming organ meats from high-quality, naturally raised livestock, he's essentially going straight to the source for a dense payload of essential nutrients like iron, vitamins, and proteins. To fuel his rampant 6'5" frame, Haaland needs a completely bonkers 6,000 calories per day. That's about 3 times what any regular person would consume. Being an elite athlete clearly gives you a free pass to eat like a frat boy at an all-you-can-eat buffet. But it's not just about piling up the plates for the big man. He also has a few other quirky habits and routines to ensure his body is operating at peak performance. For instance, he insists on getting direct sunlight beamed into his eyeballs first thing every morning, as he believes it's beneficial for regulating his circadian rhythms and sleep cycles. As for pre-match fuel, Haaland swears by a hearty plate of lasagna lovingly prepared by his father using an old family recipe passed down from generation to generation. Imagine building up for a big game by crushing a tray of cheesy pasta bake, the complete antithesis to modern sports nutrition. While Haaland's diet is certainly outlandish, his rare gifts as an athletic specimen were evident from a remarkably young age too. So much so that he actually had the other kids quite literally shook whenever he rocked up to school sports day and youth events. The tales go that even as a scrawny 5-year-old, Haaland was such a physical monster that he was basically bullying and dominating all of the other children, to the point that they were legitimately fearful of having to line up and compete against him, especially in events like the long jump, where he not only obliterated his age group's records, but managed to reset a world best mark too. It's no surprise that Haaland seemed to have been forged from Uru metal for planetary dominance from day one when you look at his gene pool. His mother was a hugely talented athlete herself, while his Icelandic father, Ulf Inge Haaland, carved out a professional football career too. In fact, the tales go that Ulf had a burning desire for his son to one day enact revenge on his behalf against the legendary Manchester United hardman Roy Keane, who had committed a shocking kung fu assault on Ulf during a feisty derby match years before, effectively ending his playing days. So from virtually the moment Erling Haaland entered this world, he was basically being molded and indoctrinated into becoming a supreme athlete. A finely tuned physical specimento of Norse creation who would stop at nothing to fulfill his destiny as a world-conquering force. Naturally, he also possessed the unshakable belief and mental fortitude to match his superhuman physicality. The early signs certainly pointed to Haaland being some sort of genetic freak who was put on this earth to dominate any athletic pursuit he turned his talents towards. Although somewhat surprisingly, those talents very nearly ended up being channeled down an entirely different path, the path of a rapper. You see, before Haaland had even hit puberty, he was already idolizing legendary hip-hop artists like Eminem, 50 Cent, and Snoop Dogg. So much so that in his early teens, he actually released his very own rap single called Flow Kick, which amassed millions of views on YouTube from kids around the globe who were captivated by this larger-than-life, blonde-haired Norse rapper. Ultimately, though, the unstoppable gravitational pull of becoming a professional athlete proved too strong. With the guidance and tutelage of his football-obsessed father, Erling made the definitive choice to divert all of his energies into chasing the dream of global football superstardom instead. With his sights locked firmly on football glory, Erling Haaland's rise through the ranks to reach the elite level was as ruthless and relentless as the Viking conquerors of ancient Scandinavia. He began turning heads as a precariously talented teenager back in his native Norway, banging in goals for fun with his hometown club Molde. It quickly became apparent that he was outgrowing the relatively small pond of the Norwegian league. So in 2019, Haaland made the move to Austrian upstarts Red Bull Salzburg, where he proceeded to an even bigger splash. In just half a season, he plundered a scarcely believable 28 goals in 22 appearances across all competitions. The world sat up and took notice. This blonde-haired goal machine was the hottest property in world football. Inevitably, one of Europe's elite clubs came calling. In January 2020, German giants Borussia Dortmund won the race for Haaland's signature in a deal worth around £17 million. A laughable fee in hindsight. Slotting seamlessly into Dortmund's dynamic, free-scoring system, Haaland simply picked up where he left off by terrorizing Bundesliga defenses with his unique blend of lightning pace, Herculean strength, and ice-cool finishing instincts. In his first half season, he struck 16 times in just 18 appearances. 2020-21 was merely the start though. Over the next 2 full campaigns with Dortmund, Haaland went stratospheric, scoring 41 goals in 41 games in his first complete season, before remarkably bettering that return with 29 strikes in 30 outings the following year. In the end, he departed with 86 goals in 89 games across all competitions for the German club. Such outrageous feats of consistent scoring ruthlessness were always going to grab the attention of Europe's nouveau riche superclubs. Dortmund did well to keep the vultures circling at bay for as long as they did. In the end, newly wealthy Newcastle came calling first and offered Haaland a world record contract worth over £500,000 per week. But the big Norwegian had loftier ambitions than just taking the superclub money. He had a burning desire to not only play for one of the serial winners of world football, but to etch his name permanently into the pantheons of game's greatest players alongside icons like Messi, Ronaldo, Cruyff, and Pelé. So when Manchester City's butterflies flashed their cash in the summer of 2022, Haaland decided to take the gamble and make the £51 million move to the Etihad in order to spearhead Pep Guardiola's latest ladder-making, trophy-hoarding dynasty. It proved to be the perfect match, the virtually unstoppable goal-scoring force meeting the most dominant team in Europe in Manchester City's coherent, free-flowing system that dominated games through possession and pinned opponents back. Haaland was finally given the keys to terrorize on the biggest stage. What followed was one of the most spellbinding individual campaigns that the Premier League has ever borne witness to. Haaland detonated a nuclear strike on the record books virtually from the opening day, smashing home a brace on his league debut at West Ham. From there, the deluge of goals never once let up. He followed that up with hat-tricks against Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest, and Manchester United in the opening few months, as defenses were left utterly shell-shocked by his physical dominance and predatory instincts. Sandwiched in between was his greatest performance yet, the 5-goal haul in the 7-0 Champions League demolition of RB Leipzig that ensured European immortality. On that night, Haaland became just the third player in history to score 5 goals in a single Champions League match. Frankly, he could have bagged 8 or 9 on another day. When all was said and done, the big Norse striker had scored an astonishing 36 goals in 35 Premier League appearances in his debut season for City, smashing virtually every scoring record under the sun. To put that into perspective, 14 different Premier League clubs needed more games to score their first 36 top-flight goals in their entire existence.